Well, guys, thank you both so much for the honour of asking me to speak today. Kicking off a series is, it's quite something. So here we go. As Pastor James has said, healthy you, healthy church. And I've been asked today to talk about rest. And what does that look like and the impact that healthy rest has on our lives. So today we're going to start by looking at one of the 10 Commandments. One that is often ignored, misunderstood, thought about as a bit old-fashioned, because we rush in our lives, don't we? We rush from one thing to another. We're always connected, we're always striving. But what if God has something better for us? Scripture tells us that God said, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy.
Yeah.
Now we remember, don't we? Remember things like do not murder, do not steal, do not commit adultery. But somehow the command to rest is seen as optional, as if it's a suggestion rather than a divine instruction.
Yeah.
Yet this command sits at the very heart of God's rhythm for human flourishing. Sabbath rest isn't just about stopping work, guys. It's about returning to who we are in God.
Yeah.
The Sabbath is also not a law to restrict us, but a gift for restoration. It's not something to earn, one of those work first, prove ourselves, maybe lie down at the end of the day without feeling guilty when we've done all the stuff. So it's a gift. And when we don't stop, we break. And when we don't risk, we just rust. So today, let's look at what it means to keep the Sabbath day of rest. And we'll start by reading from Exodus 20, verses 8 to 11. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labour and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath day to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. I think it's up there. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. In Deuteronomy 5, Moses lets the people know why this day was given to the nation of Israel, saying to them, remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm.
Yeah.
Therefore the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. See, God wanted the people to not only remember their slavery, but actually his deliverance of them. But he also wanted his people to actually rest from their labours. So when we go back to the commandment, the first word there is remember. And that tells us something. It tells us that God knew that we would forget to rest. And we forget to rest because we live in a culture, don't we, that glorifies hustle. Everybody's told, aren't they have to have a hustle, a side hustle. We're constantly told. And I think I've probably been guilty of this myself. We say things like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or success never rests. And when we're asked how we are, we quite often reply, don't we? Oh, busy, busy. Being the last to leave work is somehow seen as a badge of honour. But the Sabbath, guys, it's a protest. It's like a holy rebellion against that absolute tyranny. And it's there to remind us that our identity should never be in what we do, but in whose we are.
Yeah, that's right.
Verse 11 takes us right back to Genesis 2. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. So our God, who never grows tired, he stopped and he rested, not because he was weary, but to establish a pattern. You see, God literally wove the Sabbath into the very fabric of creation. And guys, we're made in his image, and that means we are created for work and rest. And if God rests, who are we to think that we can do better? To keep it holy means to set Sabbath isn't just a day off, it's a day unto the Lord. It's not merely to rest from something, it's to rest for something. For worship, for renewal, for communion with God. It's our time to stop doing and just to start being. Exodus 31:13 reads that observance of the Sabbath rest was a sign between God and man for generations to come. That's for all of us, so that we may know he is the Lord who makes us holy. Sabbath was and is and always will be a reminder that it is God who makes us just that. We are saved and can rest because of the choice of the Father and the Son. So resting, as I'm sure you're beginning to gather, is really important to God. So why do we resist it? Why do we neglect the Sabbath? Well, we're not just breaking a commandment, we're actually breaking ourselves. Psalm 127:2. In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves. When we refuse to rest, we act as though everything depends on us and not on God. Busyness can almost become our idol. It's a form of pride, really, an ego that is basically saying, I don't trust God enough to stop. When we desire to appear indispensable, to prove our worth through our busyness, or we fear missing out and worry that things will fall apart if we step back. It's unbelief. It's a sin of self-reliance. We lie in bed sometimes, don't we, for hours restless. We finally fall asleep and then we wake up still feeling anxious and exhausted. But true rest comes when our spirit is at peace, knowing that he is holding it all together. Colossians 1:17 reminds us, he existed before anything else, and he holds all of creation together. In Hebrews 4:9-11 says, there remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their work, just as God did from his. Therefore, let us make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one will perish by following their example of disobedience. So what happens when we begin to neglect that rest? Well, we become spiritually dry. We become a Martha instead of a Mary, busy doing things for Jesus and never sitting with Jesus. Martha was busy serving. I think there's another slide to come up, please. Luke 10 tells us, Martha was busy serving whilst Mary sat at Jesus' feet. When Martha became frustrated, Jesus said, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. So Sabbath rest, sitting with Jesus, is the better part. It's the time to sit and not just serve. And actually true rest is also a spiritual weapon. The enemy really thrives on us being exhausted, because when our hearts are tired and our brains are tired, we're really easy to deceive. When we rest in God's presence, we can see clearly, we discern wisely, and we fight from a place of victory and not defeat. And in fact, Jeremiah 17 tells us that in ancient Israel, ignoring the Sabbath led to judgment. God warned that if his people failed to honour the Sabbath, Jerusalem would be burned with an unquenchable fire. And for us now, when we lose the Sabbath, we lose our sense of community, compassion, and sometimes even our ability to care. We become restless, and actually, as we can see when we look at the news, a restless world produces chaos and confusion. God designed us. He designed us to need rhythms of both rest and work. And actually, science confirms what ancient scripture has always taught us. Chronic busyness and a lack of rest will lead, as I've already said, stress, illness, burnout. But when we give ourselves time to rest, our bodies heal, our minds are clear, And actually our relationships can begin to deepen as well.
Yeah.
As well as individuals, a rested church is healthy, joyful and resilient, and that's what we want. We want to be outward facing and healthy, joyful and resilient.
Yeah.
Corrie ten Boom is quoted as saying, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. Because both sin and busyness keep us from God. They cut off our connection to him. And actually, when we neglect our Sabbath rest, it actually begins to violate our worship between us and God. We worship what we give our time and our energy to. So when our calendars are filled, but our souls are empty, and work, as I've already said, just becomes our idol. Isaiah 58 says that if we call the Sabbath a delight, we will find our joy in the Lord. And if we ignore it, we're just replacing our worship. And these are our acts of showing our devotion, our honour and our love to God, both in private and in public. Because actually we can be here on a Sunday with our arms up, but if then we go back to the busyness, we're just violating that worship. And again, anxiety, overtiredness, feeling burdened, missing all that God has for us. What happens? We become short-tempered, don't we? Become a bit snappy, a bit distracted, a bit distant. None of us can love well when we're running on empty. So the Sabbath gives us a margin, space for love and listening and joy. To refuse rest is not only unwise, it's unloving to ourselves, to our families, and actually it's unloving to our God. In the New Testament, Jesus himself honours and redefines the Sabbath. In Mark 2, he declares, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Jesus healed and restored on the Sabbath, actually, which he was condemned for, but actually what he shows us, that God's rest is about wholeness and about mercy. And in Matthew 11, he makes the invitation, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Yeah.
So our one true rest is just found in him. He is our Sabbath, and in him our souls find rest, not just for a day or a week, but every day in our relationship with him. So the Sabbath, it's not just a legalistic ritual, it's a relational rhythm that is rooted in grace. And I just want to look at 3 forms of rest. They're actually officially, from a therapeutic point of view, there's actually meant to be 8 different types of rest. We'd be here all day, and you definitely wouldn't feel rested. But I thought I'd look at the 3 main ones.
Great.
First one, and I'm not looking at any of you in particular, is digital rest. We need to disconnect to reconnect. This is going to be really controversial for some of you, but Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. We can't be still if we are always online, or if smartwatches. Guys, I'm going to go there with them. Okay, I'm not looking at these 2 because they know what I think about them already. Your smartwatch is no different to being tagged. And I know some of you are going to find that really hard, but actually, we are contactable all the time. Somebody is constantly looking, where do we go? How many steps do we take? Do we sleep? Do we not sleep? Where do we go? What mileage do we do? Our notifications have replaced silence. Our attention, the currency of the soul, is constantly being spent. When we get those little jigs or whatever it is, it sends a big whoosh of cortisol and it doesn't do you any good at all.
Yeah.
And Sabbath rest means turning off the noise. So maybe that's taking your watch off, putting your phone down, not checking your emails on a Sunday, time away from your devices. Now, I have to be honest here, I get told off on my phone if it thinks I'm not doing enough steps. It sends me a notification saying, if I leave my phone, which I quite often do at home when we go off for a dog walk or something, I then get a message telling me that I've only done 300 steps that day, rather than the thousands that it's expecting me to do. We're not supposed to be constantly contactable like that, unless there is an emergency going on, unless something is going on in our lives, and actually we need to stay connected to our children or to our family. That's completely different. But our normal everyday life is supposed to allow some silencing. And when we allow the silencing, we become aware of what's going on around us. And then actually we can begin to make some independent decisions that align with our personal values and goals, instead of those really weird, like you talk about something and then an advert comes up on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or something. So maybe create a digital Sabbath for yourselves. No social media, no screens, just space for your soul. J. John writes in his book on the Ten Commandments, if our output exceeds our input, then our upkeep will be our downfall. So let's bring in some digital rest and slow the output. The second one I wanted to really talk about is creative rest. So enjoy God through creation. Exodus 31:17. In 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. And that word refreshed there, it literally means to catch one's breath. On the Sabbath, God invites us to do what makes us come alive, not just cease from labour or hard work, but to engage in joy, whatever that is for you. Painting, gardening, cooking, playing music, journaling, I don't know, crocheting, I can't do that at all, but something like that. But the list is absolutely endless. When we create, we reflect the image of our Creator, the ultimate Creator. So maybe think about scheduling a creative practice that brings you delight and helps you find gratitude in God. Let it be worship and not just productivity. In the 19th century, Christian author and journalist G.K. Chesterton said, "The world will never starve for want of wonders, but only for want of wonder." So begin to create something. Creative rest will always rekindle that wonder. And the third one I wanted to look at was a nature and worship rest, when we encounter God in his creation. Romans 1:12 says, "Since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen." And there's something really deeply spiritual about going away from pavements and stepping into God's world, into his beautiful creations. We're really fortunate where we live, aren't we? We're so close to the beach, to hills, to woods, to the countryside. We don't need to stay in man's creation all the time. So I'd suggest go for a walk, watch a sunrise, listen to the birds. Connecting and deepening our relationship with God, spiritual rest, is a personal journey actually that will nourish our souls and give us peace and purpose. When we feel a lack of deep relationship with Christ, everything else can feel like a chore. We lack the motivation and drive to actually begin to then achieve the things that we feel he wants us to achieve. So nature is God's sanctuary. It's a place where worship flows effortlessly. And actually Jesus himself quite often took himself away to lonely places and he prayed. So Maybe think about going for a walk, not for exercise, not so your phone or your watch, and we keep going there, it tells you that you've done all your steps, but for all, for looking at what He created. Let creation lead you into adoration. Theologian John Piper said, God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in Him. And Sabbath rest will always help us find that satisfaction. And finally, I just want to look at, I think there's one more slide to come up. Thank you. Is how can we prepare for our Sabbath rest? In Exodus 16, the Israelites were instructed to gather twice the amount of manna on the 6th day to prepare for the 7th day. And actually there's just a couple of things that we can do. So number one, you can just stop. Sabbath means to cease, to stop working, stop worrying, and stop striving. God, He'll handle the universe. It's okay. He's been doing it for a long time. He doesn't need us to keep worrying on His behalf. The second thing is to rest. Sleep, laugh, a slow meal with your family. Let your body and your mind reset. And I would say delight. Begin to delight in God's gifts, in the nature, in your friendships, in your worship, in music. Celebrate His goodness. And finally, spend some time contemplating. Spend time in scripture, in prayer, in gratitude. Let your heart rest in Christ. So in conclusion, church, when we honour the Sabbath, we are saying, God, You are my provider, not my paycheck. You are my identity and not my achievements. Sabbath is not and never should be a burden. It should always be a blessing. It's not about losing time. It's about redeeming our time. When we remember the Sabbath, we remember who God is and actually who we are not. So this week, I urge all of you, make time for digital rest, for creative rest, for some nature rest. When we rest well, we can worship well. And in doing so, we echo those words in Genesis. God saw all that He had made, and it was very good. Then He